The cerebrum is divided up into lobes the same way that you divide up the bones of the skull, and they're named in the same fashion. So we have a frontal lobe here on each side, parietal lobe, sides of the cerebrum, the temporal lobe, kind of stuck a little bit down underneath here, and the occipital lobe, which is the back portion of the cerebrum back here beneath the occipital bone. There's also a central fissure, which is a little difficult to see on a sheep's brain. It's a structure which is pretty remarkable on a human brain, but on a sheep's brain it's kind of indefinite. But basically it's a dividing line between the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe. I think on this brain our central fissure would be right along in this groove, not as deep as the other fissures. Addition from the outside, we can see the pons and the medulla. I'm going to flip the brain over here so that we can see those structures on the lower portion here. Looking at an inferior view of the sheep's brain right now. The pons actually at this moment is partially covered by this flap of tissue right here, but these enlargements right here would be the region of the pons. And just behind it, this other enlargement area right here until it turns into the spinal cord and continues on out. This region would be the medulla oblongata. Okay, having located those external structures, we're now going to look at the internal structures. We're going to take a sagittal section, so you're going to cut your sheep's brains right down through the great longitudinal fissure, and you're going to continue your incision right through the cerebellum and down through the spinal cord so that we fold the brain open into two halves. When you make this cut, you want to do it with a minimum amount of back and forth sawing that you can possibly do. Try to make the cut just a nice, sharp, smooth cut, one single cut if you possibly can. I've got a brain here that we have already open, and we'll take a look at the insides of this. So we're looking at inferior view right now. I'll turn it back over to the superior view. It'll fall in half like this when you've made your cut. Okay, looking at the halves here, we can see that on the inside of the cerebellum, here's the cerebellum in the sagittal section, we can see that there's two kinds of material in the cerebellum. There's this darker outer gray matter, and then there's a branched pattern of white matter. The branching pattern of the white matter is called the arbor vitae. It means tree of life. It's a branching tree-like pattern. If we look more up into the regions of the cerebrum here, I'm actually going to switch halves on us here. This one might show better what I want to look at here. There are cavities in the cerebrum, in the brain. One of the cavities would be right here in this half. As I open up this opening, this is called the lateral ventricle. There are two lateral ventricles, so there's one in this hemisphere of the cerebrum. There's also one in the other hemisphere. The third ventricle then would be a region below this, which if I pull this apart a little bit in here, we can see some of this this brownish material is actually within that other ventricle. So there's another cavity or another space right there where the probe is running. We've actually sectioned through the third ventricle, right through the center of it. So we have half of it in this hemisphere and the other half of it's over there. So it actually comes down and actually surrounds this entire region. This large structure here passes right through the center of that third ventricle. So if we keep following on down this direction, we'll come to the fourth ventricle. And the fourth ventricle is along this little channel right here. And as it turns into the cerebellum rather here, there's a little opening. And that other opening right in there, that extra little channel into there, would be the fourth ventricle. Okay, going back up here, we'll look at the corpus callosum. I think I'm going to switch this back again. Look at this one, a little better here. Here's the corpus callosum. It's a band of white matter. It's a white matter fiber tract that connects between the two hemispheres. So we can see it on both halves. It just happens to be a little more defined on this particular half. That's the corpus callosum. Extending off from the back end of the corpus callosum and coming forward, a little tongue sort of, I'm going to open up the ventricle.
She never switched. She had a better half on the other side. She lied to you when she said this was better. Okay. This on top, guys, is your corpus callosum. She's trying to separate in that space. That's your lateral ventricle in there. Okay. This bottom one underneath the lateral ventricle, that's your fornix. Okay, so corpus callosum's on the top. Your fornix, your lateral ventricle right now, that space she's trying to get into, and this right here represents.
You can see the fornix coming down this direction. Okay. Off the back end. The corpus callosum comes up and around, and the fornix comes downward. Possibly we'll have to switch back on that one. We're gonna have to go back and forth between these a little bit so that we can see. This shows it quite well, actually. Here's the corpus callosum. And then this white projection coming down here would be the fornix. And the lateral ventricle would be up inside there. We have an aqueduct of Sylvius, which connects from the third ventricle.
You don't have that, you don't need to know that.
Connects the third and fourth ventricle. Mammillary body is a structure which we can see from the outside as well. I'll go back and show you that on the outside view, but we can see it internally here as a structure that's been sectioned in half right there. When we review through the cranial nerves on the outside, I'll show you again where it is on the outside, and we can compare that location to this inside location for the mammillary body. The pineal body is quite a bit larger in a sheep than it is in a human relative to the proportional size of the brain. It's this other round structure right here. This is 1/2 of it. We've sliced through it by making a sagittal section.
Pineal body.
Corpora quadrigemina actually means 4 bodies. There
Alright,
are
so you guys
4
take your
structures
brains
that make up
again.
the corpora quadrigemina. There are 2
Fold them back
superior colliculi
together.
and 2
Okay,
inferior.
so take the 2 halves, fold it back together. I'm sorry if you haven't picked it up yet, you're gonna have to pick up the brain. Okay? With one hand, okay, you're gonna hold the cerebrum, which is the larger part. The other hand, you're gonna take the cerebellum, the smaller part, okay? And what you do is you're gonna flex it open. Don't snap the brain in 2 halves, okay? So basically fold it open. Inside there, you should see something mooning you right now, okay? Like butt cheeks, basically, okay? Okay, so 2 bigger butt cheeks on top and 2 smaller ones on the bottom, okay? So that makes a total of 4. The whole thing as a whole is called the corpora quadrigemina, okay? The 2 larger ones on top are the superior colliculi. The 2 on the bottom represent the inferior colliculi, okay?
That is 1/2 of the corpora quadrigemina. The total corpora quadrigemina requires 2 superior colliculi, 1 from each side, so we need the whole brain together. Actually, I think what I'll do is I'll take this other one that is still intact, fold it open, and let you see the whole corpora quadrigemina. 2 superior colliculi, 2 inferior colliculi, making
This
up
whole
the
thing is the
corpora
corpora quadrigemina.
quadrigemina.
These are the superior, these are the inferiors. Right.
Okay, so back to our sagittal section here. See which brain half has got the structures I want to look at the best.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about, guys, is the thalamus. All right, so get ready for the thalamus.
Or more or less straight back from that up into this region, there's a posterior commissure right in here. Another little small dot of white tissue. Between the anterior commissure and the posterior commissure is this very large mass. This is called the thalamus, or this is a portion of the thalamus. Actually, the thalamus continues back down into the hemisphere there, but this enlarged portion right here would be the thalamus. Hypothalamus, hypo means below, so when we look for the hypothalamus below the thalamus, it's this region right in here, between this enlargement here and this mammillary body back here, which we identified previously. This other area, kind of grayish in here, would be the hypothalamus. The pituitary gland is not on this
Alright, so that
particular
little
gland,
membrane I
it's
gave
been
you
removed
guys,
so that we could
take
make
that
the
little
sagittal
membrane.
section easily. If your
On there, you
pituitary
guys can
gland
see
is
that
still
little
in place, it'll be a large
white
structure, it'll be
structure.
right about here,
Point out your
hanging
pituitary.
off the undersurface. I do have a pituitary gland still in place on this one, and that's why I saved this one. With the membrane still intact around it on the inferior view, this large structure right
So
here.
that membrane I gave you was once attached onto the
In order to
underside
see
of
the
your
cranial nerves, which is
brain.
going to be our next
Okay, so
step,
this
we're going to
membrane
have
right now,
to
you can
remove
see
this
it.
entire piece of membrane
Pituitary is
along
right there.
with the pituitary gland,
Yeah.
so that we can get down and look at those cranial nerves.
So
If you
holding that
haven't done that
pituitary in
already,
place,
you'll need to do that.
okay, or
But
actually
you'll need
these
to be very
cranial nerves that
careful
we'll
in the
talk
way
about
that you
last,
remove
okay?
this membrane to preserve any
pituitary.
small white fibers. You can possibly see on this brain, for example, right here, are 2 small cranial nerves. This happens to be cranial nerve pair number 6, the abducens nerve. And you can see that this is anchored to this membrane. There'll be actually several pairs of nerves that are anchored to the membrane, so you have to locate those first and be very careful to clip them away from the membrane before you remove this so that you don't remove the nerves at the same time. They're small and they're fragile.
All right, guys, so the last thing we're going to talk about is the cranial nerves, okay? So you got to take your brains, turn them upside down. Okay, now, the brain she's going to show you was done by a student that did it pretty well, okay? Meaning that they removed that membrane that has pituitary, while still keeping the cranial nerves that once anchored that membrane to the brain, by still keeping those cranial nerves intact, okay? So the cranial nerves that you can see on the video versus what you have short little stubs, okay? The ones you're gonna see on the video are nice, they're really long and they're luxurious, right? Okay? So look in the region she's pointing at. Don't expect to see something as long as she's pointing out. Just the region she's looking, try to find those short little stub, that's the nerve that we're talking about.